Hello, in this video I'm going to look at creating the output drawings for the assignment task. Now, as I've previously said, it's important to remember that we are only actually getting marks for these output drawings. The modelling parts themselves doesn't actually generate any marks. So we've got 1A, which is a sectional elevation and end elevation, or plan and end elevation of the base and the shade. Drawings must be complete with hidden detail and appropriate dimensions for manufacture, annotations and a suitable scale. That's fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up our drawing template. Now before I open that as template, that's just because I've copied it and placed it in. I'm just going to rename it. So course assignment drawing pack. Okay, so I'm going to open that up and as started. So we set this up before. Okay, I've set up the project title as well, but anything that you need to update, you can update on your title block from the beginning. And make sure as well that you've got any sketch symbols added as necessary. So for the first sheet, it was an orthographic. Now we are given drawings for this, so anything that we create on here essentially needs to have the same thing as we had before. So I'm going to start, or same thing that we're given, so all the dimensions that are on there, all the center lines we need to reproduce. So we're going to do it first for the base, and I'm going to start with the plan view. Probably 1 to 2 is probably going to be most suitable. I might change that later. The reason why I'm going to start with the plan view is from this plan I can create a section. So to remember, trail your cutting plane off to the edge and don't snap it to the edge. This means the thick outside edges are left without anything on it. I'm just going to go in and fix that. It's already given it as a stupidly big label. That's because I've used this template before, but I've updated my labels. Now I can adjust these to put things in, but I'm not going to worry too much about that at the moment. I can then project off my view. In fact, I'm going to give the left hand elevation. The reason for this is I can then see that whole detail. Whilst, yes, hidden detail is shown, it's probably just a bit more sensible to see that side. And that's all the views that I need for the first piece. The other thing they asked for was of the shade. And again, do the same thing. I'm just going to show the plan view and put this in place. I can create the section. And then create the projected view. Now obviously I've quite hastily made all of this. Now I need to spend the time to actually position everything and get everything correct. Okay, so that's roughly everything out. The first thing I'm going to fix is all of my view labels. And that's it set up. So once I've set all this up, what I usually start with is center lines. Now this is going to be a bit of a pain of a drawing to create center lines for a multitude of different reasons. So there will need to be a lot of sketched information rather than actually just putting on layers. For example, if I put a center line on this, I end up with a double line over my cutting plane, which I don't really want to do. When that prints out, it won't be immediately clear. So a lot of the sketches that I'll put on will actually be as sketched work. So I'm going to create a sketch on here, and I'm going to create a line down the center point. Change this by layer to dash dot and to red. Now remember, color isn't actually important, but it can make it a little bit clearer. To even things out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to constrain the midpoint to the midpoint of that line, and this puts it perfectly in the middle. I can also dimension this line, whilst not strictly necessary. It can leave me with more even tabs. When I finish the sketch, you can see, as I say, it leaves it even and open, which can be quite useful. So do the same thing again. Just trail off of it, draw out my line, use the center constraint to put it onto the middle of that line, and we can then dimension this. So I'm just probably bring it to 6. I'll take that to 60, otherwise it's a little bit too big. Probably even go 55. So you can't see these dimensions, but when they do show up, that's what you get. So that's really all I need on that view. On this view here, we've got the central piece, and I've just noticed I'm missing hidden detail. The reason for this is a projected view from a section, and while sections don't typically show hidden detail, what I will do, I'll have to remove the associated nature of it and turn to show hidden detail on this view. Now I should get away with just the normal creation of center lines on here. Again, in fact, I won't. The reason why this is shown up as half, so I can't even use a center mark, is because it's on a curved plane, which isn't ideal. So what I'm going to do, the same thing again, I'll start a sketch, and I'll just manually draw a line in the position. So dash dot and red. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to project the geometry of that edge because it doesn't show up. Working in this mode isn't particularly, well, in fact that's still not showing it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to create a line between these two. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a sketch only line, join the two of those up. With a sketch only line, essentially it doesn't show on the output drawing, it's just within this sketch mode. Same thing like all the construction and projected geometry that's come up. So I'm going to use that to position in the middle, and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Now I'm not overly happy with this. Realistically, it should be the other way around. I don't know of a better way to fix this currently, but you shouldn't really have a dot in the middle. The only way I can really think of fixing it is by changing this so it is much bigger. I guess, in fact, that's probably what I will do. What can I get away with? Let's see if I can go to 15. I'm going to go to 16. There you go. Right, I'll go to 16. It is a little bit, I guess, bigger from it, but it means that we don't end up with not quite happy. I'm going to go a little bit bigger so I can see the center line going out the edge of the shape. It is quite big, but we shouldn't be having the center mark shown by the dot. It should be a solid line. And that's all the points that we need on here. And again, for this one, we can use the, what's it called? Bisector? Yeah, centerline bisector. Creates a parallel line between the two edges for these ones. But we do need to put one in the middle here. Now, if I do the bisector between this and this, yeah, it doesn't quite work. What can I do? Can I go from the midpoint of that? No, because that's not one continuous line. It won't let me do it. So again, I'm going to go into sketch mode, apply the sketch to this view here, and I'm going to create this line that intersects through the middle. What I'm going to have to do is, so is that's the midpoint of my line. Yeah, so I'm going to make a sketch only line first, and I'm then going to create, I'll just make it out here, a line that is dash dot and red. Now I've made that as sketch only, so I'm going to need to turn that off, otherwise you won't see it. In fact, I'll show you that. So if I have this line now, it's sketch only, so when I finish this sketch, you can't see it. Whereas if I turn off sketch only, there it is. So I want to position that midpoint onto the midpoint of the other one that I just created, and I'm going to dimension this to probably, oh, that's 12, so let's say 15. And that then gives me my center line. Quite happy with that. So I think that's all my center lines for this part. I'll move on to the one over here. Same thing as before, I don't have hidden detail on this, so I'm going to remove the associated nature and turn it on that view. What have we got? Again, all I'm doing to help me with these, of course I can do it without it, but to help me with these, I'm looking at the drawings in front of me. I'm going to need a single line going down here, which means I don't really want to make center marks and an additional one, because then they overlap and it can ruin the clarity of the drawing. So yeah, right. I'll use a center mark on the corners. I can also use the bisector of these points, and make sure you do select the correct ones. It'd be very easy not to. The reason why I know that is that one is, or this edge here is on the inside of that, so that means on this it is this one and that one here to get the center point. And in fact, I'm going to delete that one off. Oh, I don't want to delete the full view, just that one, because I'm going to have one single center line going down the middle. So again, back to sketch, apply the sketch to this. The reason for this is if I move this view, it moves with the sketch. So it's important that you are applying the sketch to the particular view in question. So what we can do is change all this. Dash dot, red. And I'm just going to manually do this one because I can't think of a perfect way. No, I say I'm going to manually do it. I'm going to align it with the center. I'm going to manually do that because I can't think of a perfect way. Oh, is that in the center? Not sure if it's done. And then we still need then the horizontal lines for these. So turn on sketch only, and I want to just project the geometry of this. Project the geometry of this. Project the geometry of this. I'm going to create a point. I need to do it with a line. I'll create a line between these. A line between these. A line between these. And that gives me a midpoint that I can work with. So if I have a series of lines, I can then just move them from the middle point to the middle point. Makes it a little bit easier for me. As I say, it's quite difficult working in this mode, purely because it picks up a lot of the other stuff and it's difficult to see. And again, there might be a better way of all of this than I know, but certainly for me, this is what I do. I'm just going to make these all equal, and again, I need to have them so that they are somewhere producing a length in the middle rather than a dot. 14 is the smallest I can get it. So this is a prime example. I've left all that on as sketch only lines. So I'm just going to select those ones, turn off sketch only, and then we're back. And that for me is the best way to get all of these on. Without that, as I say, you end up with double lines, and it's not particularly great. With this one here, remember, the circle actually continues on, so we've actually only got the geometric center here. So if I use the center mark, I would imagine, yeah, it creates it off actually the center point's over here. And if I do the same thing and create the center mark on there, it's too small. Now, I can extend that out to the lengths that I want, but we are leaving the one in the middle. I guess as a maybe body you could do that, but again, it's just overlapping a little bit. So the best way to do it is with a sketch. It takes more time, but when we're concerned with getting things correct, then we should take the time to do it. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to project the geometry of the inside circle, which then gives me the center point, and I can create a line that is vertical, give it the properties of a center line, and put it on the middle of my point. I'm going to dimension this one again. I'm going to say 155. Oh, that's given me a gap in the middle. Let's see what we get with 150. Yeah, so now I will actually create a mark in the middle rather than a gap. And this leaves me with just the one between it rather than anything else that's going through it. Now whilst we're in this as well, I'll create a circle with the same thing to the center points to mark my pitch center diameter. And there we go, that's all the center lines that we need for this one. And then for this, same thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the phantom lines to show the shape before it was fully formed. Yeah, just to show where everything is. But I can do the same thing. I can add my center marks for up here. I can put the bisectors in. So this is a threaded part. As long as I choose the same one, it should end up in the middle. So I could choose either the outer or the inner. It doesn't really matter. And I'll still need the line down the middle. So back to a sketch. First thing I'm going to add is the line that goes along there, and the line that goes there, and I'm just going to trim those and make those a phantom line. So a phantom line, excuse me, is dash double dotted. Oh, no it's not. Oh, dash double dot. Now this isn't quite right, and I'm going to make that parallel to this one, which should bring in, yeah, so in doing so that wasn't actually the correct position. Now this will help me later because it means I can put the angle dimension in there as well. I just want to add the line going down from the bottom, so from top to bottom. I'll put a vertical constraint on to position it into the middle. I know it's correct then. I'll just use the red and dash dot. Okay, and that is Alright, that is these fully center-lined. So that was quite a lengthy process, but it means we're actually getting correct and full annotations on the drawings. The pre-made ones are great, use them where you can, but sometimes you do just need to manually put these on and you want to do them correctly. Okay, so now it's two dimensions. So we'll keep going with this just because I've got the page in front of me. It's asking for the outer diameter of this, and I take back my complaint in the previous video where I complained about them only providing this in a dimension, because I'm just blind. They actually did provide this. All I'm doing at this stage is I'm providing exactly the same information as they did on theirs. The reason for this is if they provided, or if they being the SQA, provided enough information to allow you to model this, then it has enough information to just copy. So it's an easy way to double check that you have enough of what you need. Just actually bring that on the page. Okay, so further dimensions. We'll set up a chain dimension between this line and this. We have a radial dimension on the top. Okay, so this is not ideal because it's not going to lead off the shape, and if I move that, it doesn't like it. And I can't use that because that is in a different position. It's not ideal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the dimension style. And when we go to display, I'm just going to increase the origin offset to 1.5. So that just increases my gap out a little bit. Yes, it's increased that, but it's just taken enough to take it off the shape. That's probably the easiest way I can think in my head. In fact, I'm going to take this all back because it is the outside edge that I want. Silly me. So it's that point there, which will give us 5. I'll take it all back. And it makes sense because that's dropped because of the thickness of it. Sorry, excuse me for my stupidity. I swear I put those chain dimensions on. There we go. I don't really know what happened to those. Now I'm going to move this and this down the way. So the actual label. So just try and move it vertically down, and this is going to give me space to fit this in, or fit in some of the other dimensions. Try and keep them even, that's clearly not, but I can then dimension and put that in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move that down a little bit further. I'm actually going to move it over, and it'll bring it more in line with the center. The way it positions it when it comes in automatically is based on the shape, not, and the shape ends there, not on the actual the uncut shape, because it doesn't know what that would be. Diameter 20, and that's everything I need on that one. So there's another, well, there's a hole in a thread dimension. Now it doesn't actually ask for all that information, so I'm going to edit some of this. I'm going to take away the thread classification, and I'm going to add in 2 holes. Which gives us everything that we need, and a little bit more because it's also got the pitch on it. Diameter 5. So this is not ideal again. Because this is happening on a curve, it's split this in two. I would not leave this as a radius. A radius is used for an incomplete circle. This is a complete circle. So I'm going to hide the dimension and I'm going to manually put in the 5. Now, because I've manually done it, it means if I changed it, it wouldn't update. So it is something to be wary about. But it means we get the proper format and we are using diameter dimensions in the correct situation. So we have, they're using two parallel dimensions here. So a parallel dimension between the positions. So I'll just put that in place. And there we go. Oh, that's probably what I did to that first one. You have to right click and create for it to actually go in. And I've included all the dimensions that they've included, so I am quite happy with that. You'll notice as I move these out, all the sketch marks move with it as well, which is what I was talking about earlier. When we apply sketches, we apply it directly to the object. So if I find my drawings for the base, I'm just going to copy these off. So I'm going to dimension from point to point, give me the major axis, point to point, give me the same, and I'm just going to go outside of the section line. I'm going to try give myself a little bit more space here. I might need to adjust this a little bit later on. I have a parallel dimension that's happening inside. And some diameters. 40. And of course you could use some of the retrieve annotation stuff. I personally don't like it. It gives me less control, which I don't think is great. I know I'll fix that. That'll give me a bit more space if I move that up. It was bugging me how close it was to the bottom, but that gives me a bit more space to fit things in. Okay, and I think that's all the dimensions we need for the plan. So for the section view, we'll create a chain dimension for the bottom to the top. I'm stupid. So you can see with this 12, it's not ideal, so I'm just going to pull that out to the side, allow me to fit it in. These are all the small things you've got to check as you go through it. I'm going to pull this down to give me space to fit in a dimension. I could put the dimension somewhere else, but purely for ease and speed, I am 100% just copying what the SQA have provided. It means I'm less likely to make a mistake, and since time is definitely a consideration, that's what I'm doing. So be careful with this. Sometimes if you maybe selected that and that, oh no, I wouldn't. Just make sure that you are getting a gap in between your dimensions. You want your projection lines to actually lead off the shape and not be too close. Okay, so I'm maybe going to delete this, and this will give me a bit more space to move this in to the right and allow me to lay this out in a neater way. I was just feeling things are a little bit too cramped here in the middle, and if I separate it all out, I can fix that. Yeah, that's a little bit better, and I'll put that note text back on. And what was it for? My pitch center diameters. 8 holes, diameter 5 on 30 PCD. Okay, and that's my first drawing sheet completed. If we go back to the assignment, the next thing it was asking me to do was produce a sectional elevation and an end elevation of the assembled lamp to a suitable scale, include a nut, washer and machine screws in these views. So it's now of the overall thing. Okay, so we'll start a new drawing sheet. If things are all set up correctly, your drawn numbers should automatically do. Your scale will obviously update as you put things in. Now it's just purely asking for, what was it, an end elevation? Sectional elevation and end elevation. So I'm going to produce the end elevation and I'll give the back so that you can see some of the detail from it, so you're learning maximum information. So I've taken it as scale as 1 to 2, and you can see it updates if you made your template correctly. If you need more information on the template, then please watch the video to update your template. But we can now, I'll just move this down first of all, create a section of this view leading the two objects. So because this was my third view, it should be, third section, I will label it C. Now you'll see my end lines are overlapping into the shape. I want to make sure that they are off. Just going to adjust that a little bit. Should be able to move up to give me a bit more space. Something, in fact, I've entirely missed, which has just come to my head, is my section lines. Now, technically, they don't need to be 45 degrees. It's technically not a British standard, although we've all been taught it, so we'll do it. So I'll do this the other direction, and I'll change the scale of this one, and I'll take it down to probably 0.2. Let's go 0.3. And just that will allow us to see it a little bit more. But yeah, make sure you fix your hatching. So back to sheet 2, this is why it's going to be an issue, especially on some of these threaded parts. Now you'll see when it actually comes in, I need to double click this, go into display option to turn on the threaded features, and when that comes in, you can see the threaded lines of the parts. So you can see the internal thread and the base of it. Leave these on. It will take some adjustment and getting everything right. Same with this at the top. You can see as well the because of the classification of the thread, some of the gap, because there's obviously wiggle room into it, but we'll need to do some fixing up because we don't want these hatching lines to go into the other. So first off the bat, I'm going to edit those, no, I'm going to hide those, and we'll need to get those correct. I'm going to edit those 135, and I'm going to change these to maybe 0.3. Go 0.2. And the other ones I'll edit. .45 and maybe 0.1. The reason why I'm going so thin for these scales is otherwise you can't really see them. I'll fix that manually in a bit, and I'm quite happy, I think, with this as it is down here. Obviously, our nuts and threads haven't been sectioned. This is because they are content center parts. If they're not, you can right click and you can change the section to so that it doesn't do it. So for example, the base, I could right click the base section and go to none. Why is that not working? Yeah, can't quite remember how you do that. There's a way of essentially adjusting it. That's annoying me. I don't know how to do that. Anyway, in this instance, it's not an issue because we've got these. The other thing you can do is you can hide obviously your sections. So the first thing that I'm going to start doing is, as I say, fixing what's going on up here. So I'm going to start a sketch on this view, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make I'll project the geometry first, and what I'm going to do is essentially I'm going to make regions to then fill a hatch with. So if I just use the rectangle tool, to the same thing with the bottom tool, then just use the line tool to manually trace around the shape. Oh. Now I'm not gonna lie, I don't know if that undid everything or just the last line. As I say, I really dislike, and I didn't think it undid everything. I really dislike working in this mode. It's very difficult to actually see what you're working on because of the colouring and the way that the lines are overlapping. But we'll soon see if it worked or not. Because when we go to fill the hatch, the reason why it takes a little bit of time at this stage is just because it's linking up into the yeah, so I'm going to deselect that. I don't think I've either made a mistake or I don't think I've sectioned out that bit. So now when I go in, I'm hoping that that would now give me options. Yeah, so it was including that bit and I only want this bit. So the hatch we want to use, ANSI 31, it's fine, 0.4. So it's a mistake that I've made. I'm going to go actually 0.09, so we're going to go really thin. I'm going to flip the direction of that in a bit, but if I repeat this fill and hatch, and keep everything the same because it's the same part, it obviously needs to follow. So what I did is I use 0.09, and just keep going around and adding to it. I don't quite know why it's taken so long. There we go. And then one last one, but I think I'm going to have to re-sketch that just because it's only letting me pick up that closed one. So hopefully now. Yeah, same as before, 0.09, and we're fine. So I'm going to flip this one now around. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. So you can see the section now goes into the bit of thread down there, but it's not going into the overlapping thread as the male part is threaded into the female. So we can finish the sketch, and that looks okay. So I'm just going to edit this. I'm going to change it to -45. Just flips it the other way. And yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay, so two conditions. Two conditions it said we had. We'll do that now. It was just reminding me I've actually obviously missed some of the details from down here. Obviously, because this is still third angle projection symbol, then please do add in your sketch symbol. I will obviously have to update the drawing titles for the pages. I realise I've not done on the last one. But in the instructions it does tell us that we should provide detail views of the assembly point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a detail. Detail A you could use. I'm going to use D because it's, I guess, the next bit of technical detail. So I want an increased view of this. I'm going to go to 1:1 at the moment. We'll see what we go. Yeah, I could probably make that a little bit bigger. So I'm going to increase the scale to 2:1. And that gives us a bit more space. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And a detailed view again of the same. So this will be detail C. And let's move that into a bit more space. Again, the label position is based on the overall shape, so I'm just going to bring that in so it's a bit more central to the actual detail view. Again, if your labels aren't coming up correctly, you can go in and you can manually edit them, but if you set up your drawing sheet correctly, then this should all update appropriately. I'm going to try see what this looks at 2:1. It might be too big. Yes, it definitely is too big. It's bigger than what we've got. The scale for the main page is half. We can get away with this being a bit more detailed 2:1, and then this at 1:1. Okay, now this should have, what does it ask us for in terms of annotations? So it doesn't actually tell us to add any annotations onto this at all. It should still have center lines onto it. That's potentially a bit more problematic. Yeah, should have center lines on it. It doesn't ask us for dimensions though, so that's a little bit easier. Now this overall is cylindrical down the middle, so that deals with most of it. So I'm just going to include some center marks, I guess, for these. Whether it would need them or not, I mean, you can see where am I trying to go? Center mark. Yeah, I really dislike those. I mean, I could manually put some of these on. Yeah. Nah, I'm going to ignore those. I'm going to ignore those. On this, should be easy enough to achieve. And I know that's not the best attitude to have, the fact that it's easy that I'm going to do it. But for those, it's a little bit more problematic. And a lot of this is covered in that original piece. So yeah, these are kind of secondary. but I'll put the main ones on. So I'm going to create a sketch on here because I do want the center line going up the full middle of the piece. This is a little bit more tricky. Now what I could do, so before I do that sketch, I could annotate this, I could create center line pieces, and will it allow me to do the same thing? You end up with this really poor transition. What I should have is a sketch line that goes up all the way through. It actually doesn't transition that bad, so I'm going to risk it and just accept that those transitions are not great. And we get overlapping lines. Not proud of it, but I'm doing it. Again, so I'm going to create a sketch on here. Project the geometry of my edges. Draw myself a sketch only line. And then draw my line between it. Put it in the middle. And then I can change the red and line type. Well, I think it was 14 or something like that before I was getting it on the center point. And of course, what have I done? Same as I always do, I've left it sketch only. I'm going to start updating some of the views as well, get my labels, so that's my end elevation. I'm just going to move those up a little bit. There's a bit more space in the bottom than there's at the top. Do the same thing with all of these, and I'll just use bisectors. And a line out the middle. Okay, now I've made some bodging in the middle, but that mainly deals with it. Now something I didn't realise is on the drawing it doesn't cross over. So what I'm going to have to do with this bit is do the exact same thing. Now I've got another class coming in, my Twilight class coming in, so I'm going to pause this video and I'll come back to it at the end of Twilight. So hopefully it's not too disjointed, but I'll try and remember that that's what I'm working on. And I think as well I have to do part C, so I've still got an exploded isometric view, which shouldn't take too long. So I've not got much more left to do, but I've got to finish that off and then take an exploded view and just make sure all my title blocks are correct. So I'll be back. Okay, so yeah, Twilight's over. So I think I was fixing the section in this, or the hatching rather. So it's the same thing, apply a sketch to it. If we project the geometry of the sketch, we can then outline the parts we want to hatch. It's a little bit annoying that it doesn't pick up the oops, undo that. It doesn't pick up the stuff that we've already done, which is a pain in the butt. And this side as well. Be careful with this. You need to make sure that you are doing the right bits. Obviously it is after Twilight. I do want to go home. So this is when you start to make mistakes and you start rushing and you get things wrong. Now obviously with assignment, the odd mistake here and there shouldn't cause you too much of an issue in terms of your marks. It's not going to be detrimental. However, if you make some glaring errors, obviously that will. So for example, if you are slightly missing some of your center lines or one of your center lines, you probably will get away with it, as it's usually done within a range. If things are mostly correct, you should get it. So angle for this one is fine, but I'm going to go to the scale 0.9, 0.09. Yeah, something like that. And I keep applying this out. And then the two last pieces to go. This bit is important that you do get the same angle. Whilst I say the angle is technically not important, but they should be matching, and they should be matching scales. If they're not matching angles and scales, then you will not get the mark for it, because that signifies that it is a different part. So all of that piece of the boss should match the hatching throughout. Okay, so we can now finish the sketch. I think I can see one center line that I'm missing down at the bottom. I don't think I ended up doing a sketch. I know I made a little bit of a bodge here. The likelihood that someone marking this would pick it up is unlikely. It's not correct, but the time that it would take to draw out perfectly within that is a bit more of a pain. Sometimes you could show the sketch, so I would maybe be able to show the path from the drawing, but yeah, don't worry too much about that. It's largely correct. So start 2D sketch. I want to project the geometry again, and from the midpoint on a sketched only line, which I think is there, we want to produce a center line. The center line should be vertical. It should be almost made the same mistake that I've made every single time. Yeah. Take it off sketch only. Red by layer dash dot. This should be positioned concentric, not concentric, sorry. What's the word I'm looking? Coincident. That's what it is. 14. And there we go. So that is obviously the elliptical feature on the inside. I think this cuts off, yeah, before it, so you don't see any of that cylindrical nature. We do have that one though that we have missed. And I think that's everything for this sheet. So if we go back to this, we've got produce a sectional elevation and addendal elevation of the assembled lamp to a suitable scale. Include a nut, washing machine screw in these views so that you can see them all in those views. Now, granted, yes, you can't see these positions in that. This is an assembled view. I would not show hidden detail in an assembled view unless specifically asked. It would start to look a little bit overcomplicated. So there's no hidden detail shown on that view. The next thing I asked was detail views to show the connection at this part here and a connection at the top, which again we've got. Excellent. So part C, produce an exploded isometric view of the lamp, of the assembled lamp, include the nut, washer, machine screws in this view. So another new page. So please use new sheet. This time we are going to put in the base, but we will choose the exploded assembly, and it will take that that drawing that we had before. Now the scale of this, we should use recognized scales. 1 to 4 is not, so 1 to 1, 1 to 2, and 1 to 5 would be the next jump up. 1 to 4 is not a recognised scale, so yeah, we shouldn't really be using it. So 1 to 2, it should fit in the page, which it does, and when it comes in. Now at the moment this is showing tangential surfaces, so if I double click this and go into display options, I can turn off tangent edges, and that will get rid of those connections that we've seen, and it just again neatens the view up entirely. Now I'm not going to include center lines on this. Again, they'd be going up through these positions. It is a pictorial view after all. You should be able to see that you should be able to see exactly what it is. So in this case, it is an exploded isometric. This is a visual bug. It does actually say exploded isometric. I know it's saying view 3. If I go between sheets, that's not doing it. Anyway, it does actually say exploded isometric. I don't know what causes it, but it does. I won't need the third angle projection symbol because it's not in third angle projection. It is just a pictorial view. The last thing that I want to do is I want to add in the drawings or the drawing names. Same thing, we'll update this. If everything's gone right with the way they made your template, a lot of this stuff should be updated. Obviously you don't need to change your name unless you've had a change of name. And the drawing title for this, what's actually on this sheet, let's have a wee look. So sectioned or assembly views. And sheet 1. Okay, so all of these are up to date now. We've got our 1A, which was sectional elevations, including plan and end elevation with all the details on. So we've got all the sizes, all the notes that we need. We know that we've got these because we've just included the exact ones that they have provided. On sheet 2, we have the assembled drawing with a sectional elevation with some detail views showing it. Showing the connection points. We've fixed the hatching to make sure everything's correct. We've added center lines where appropriate because these are at a funny angle. It's not really easy to do and not really needed. You can see that it is a circular or cylindrical feature. And then sheet 3 was the exploded isometric. So this video has probably been a little bit longer than the other, and that will be the case. I imagine creating the drawings will take a little bit more time than the modeling stage. But I think all in all, with the videos together, this is maybe 40 minutes, maybe it was 40 minutes in the first video. This is maybe pushing into the hour. So in this process, it should be taking us, or take us probably maybe the 2 hours. If we go back to this, we do have 3 hours for this section. So if you don't get things straight away, it's not really an issue. Something I did notice in this, and maybe it would be causing some issue with people, it does say we should take 4 or 5 pages to do this. I'm not really sure what the need is to do it. So sectional end elevation for the base and the shade. So we're only doing 2 parts there. Yeah, I'm not really sure why I'm a page down on their estimations, but it should be fine. As long as you've got things at a sensible scale, which I think you do, if you create these at scale of 1 to 2, you can see everything on it. This page, although I'm not really overly keen on these things just floating about, they are clearly labelled. They are in plenty of space as well. And the last sheet we have the exploded isometric. So I think that's it for task 1. The next task would be some of the desktop publishing work, I think. So again, thanks for watching. Hopefully this helps. Thanks.